Hey everyone, this is Nick, and it's time for the best kind of news, the Linux and open source news. It's not necessarily always the best news or the worst news, but it's the best kind. So this week we have Docker Hub, basically kicking out open source organizations and deleting their images from the platform. We have Ubuntu and Debian being fed up with Python package managers and their distro-destroying powers, and we have the beta release of Fedora 38 with all its GNOME 44 goodness. But that's not all. We also have OpenSUSE apparently gaining popularity like crazy, we have the Thunderbird Android client, and we have the segue to today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Linode. Linode is the only solution I use to run my own Nextcloud server and my OnlyOffice server as well. It's a super easy solution to deploy basically anything you want in one click. They have a huge marketplace of applications you can host, from Nextcloud, WordPress, Drupal, GitLab, or Grafana, to gaming servers for Minecraft, Ark, CSGO, Rust, Valheim, and more. They take care of all the configuration for you. All you have to do is click the thing you want to deploy, fill in a few details, and your server is up and running. And once everything is live, it's still super easy to manage your servers, to upgrade or downgrade them, add some storage, back them up, and get help if you're stuck. I've been using Linode for years now, and I can only recommend them. If you want to give them a shot, click the link in the description below, and you'll get $100 of free credit to get started. So it looks like there's trouble with Docker Hub. Every user that had created an organization on Docker Hub received an email telling them their organization would be deleted if they didn't upgrade to a paid team plan. And that deletion includes all Docker images that they have linked to that organization. This is obviously an issue, and it predominantly affects open source organizations that use this to distribute Docker images to users or use them internally. The main problem is that paid plans are $420 per year, which isn't something all projects can afford. And this system was also used by a lot of open source projects going as far back as 2016, because while Docker has an open source program that would let open source organizations avoid this transition to a paid plan, this program is apparently completely out of touch and only allows personal projects worked on in people's spare time, or projects that completely belong to an open source foundation, which basically ignores 99% of how FOSS dev is being done these days. Another issue is that these organization accounts, when terminated, might also become available to be claimed by someone else, which means malicious actors could just jump in, pay, create malicious Docker images, and distribute them using the name of a popular project that no longer exists on Docker Hub. Apparently, the CTO of Docker said that they won't let anyone reuse the names of projects that are terminated, but it's an informal commitment on Twitter, which is not reassuring. And of course, Docker is a startup/company, they need to make money. But this move basically pulls the rug under the feet of any open source project that makes just even the tiniest amount of money through sponsors, donations, or sales of services. So your options are basically to move to another service to distribute container images, or at least to recreate a personal account using the same name as the organization that has been deleted, so no malicious actor can squat on that name. Fedora 38 beta is now available in a lot of various variants. The one that will interest most people is Fedora Workstation, being the desktop distro, but they also have the server beta, a version for the Internet of Things, a version for cloud, and a minimal version called Core OS. Plus, all the spins are also available for Plasma, XFC, LXD, LXQT, Mate, Cinnamon, Sway i3, and a lot more. Of course, the highlight here is GNOME 44, with background app support, refined quick settings, an improved lock screen, and better accessibility settings. The other main change in Fedora is that enabling third-party repos will enable FlatHub in its entirety, not just the Fedora subset that they added before. All packages were updated in the repos, and they're now built with frame pointers, which should let developers profile their application's performance way more easily on Fedora. Packages are also now built with stricter compiler flags that should prevent buffer overflow, and the package manager now uses a Sequoia-based OpenPGP parser instead of its own implementation, so it should be easier to maintain and it should be more secure. And so, of course, you can already download it from the link in the description below if you want to test it out. I know I will, if only to test GNOME 44 to write my review of that new version for next week. The next Debian and Ubuntu releases will very likely not let you use pip anymore, unless it's in a virtual environment. And they also won't let you install Python outside of what the distro provides. The rationale here is that it's too easy to break the existing Python installation done using your regular package manager by using pip, whether you use it to install Python and its various modules as root or as the user. So Debian 12 and Ubuntu 23.04 will very likely adopt a new proposal titled PEP 668, which, while it sounds like a Star Wars order meant to kill Jedis, is in fact a Python enhancement proposal, and it will mark the Python base environments as externally managed, and it won't allow regular pip install use for users and administrators by default. Fedora 38 also has a proposal to do the same, although it has not been accepted just yet. This change can still be rolled back, but it looks like it's gonna go through, and it leaves users with a few alternatives still. First, using the already installed Python on your system, and using your package manager like apt to install modules to it. Second, you can use pipx, which does the same thing as pip, but creates an isolated environment that won't mess up your system installation. Or you can force the use of regular pip by using the break system packages option when using it. And some people might see that as an intrusion on the freedom of how they use their distro, including the freedom to break it. But honestly, since Debian package management tends to be broken by anything and everything, and Python is so crucial to how Ubuntu and Debian run these days, I think it's a good thing. If you like your Debian packages, then you should use these to install Python modules, not an external Python package manager. And if the argument is that Debian versions are too old in Ubuntu or Debian, well, then that's kind of the point of the Debian packages, and that's why other installation methods have been created. It looks like OpenSUSE is growing a lot in terms of popularity. It's always been one of the big, old distros, but it never gets that much coverage, and I'm guilty of that as well. Well, it looks like users are still giving it a shot, more and more in fact, as the numbers of downloads has near doubled since June 2022, at least for OpenSUSE Leap, the more traditional release of the distro, as Tumbleweed, which is their rolling release model, stayed very stable in terms of download numbers. The conjecture seems to be that people using Ubuntu are getting tired of the unpopular moves the distro is pulling, like preventing flavors from adding Flatpak out of the box or focusing on snap packages when people don't really like those. But as people want something that is still backed by a company, plus some stability and simplicity, they turn to OpenSUSE, which fits this model perfectly. And I can't say if that conjecture is true or not, but the download numbers don't lie. OpenSUSE is definitely growing in popularity, which means that it might be time I finally gave it another shot, because the last time I tried it, I think Novel was still the owner of that distro. The KDE team is still hard at work on making sure Plasma 6 is the best Wayland experience possible, as they fixed a lot of issues that could affect the Plasma Wayland session, and a lot of these will also make it to KDE 5.27 in the next update. These fixes include improving the robustness of screen arrangements in multi-monitor setups that might have the same EDID values. There's improved scaling for GTK apps on Plasma on Wayland. They fixed a crash of Plasma when the window title was super long, and screen recording and task manager thumbnails are now fixed for NVIDIA users on Wayland as well. On top of that, they improved the welcome screen for the Arc Archive Manager to let you reopen recent files, create a new archive, or open one in just one click. Ocular's toolbar has been revamped a bit and shows the View Mode button by default, and the Info Center app now has a better sidebar with flattened categories instead of having to dig through subcategories and going in and out of those. And most of these changes will make it to KDE Plasma 5.27 through a point release, or through KDE Gear when it comes to the application updates, which is really cool. You don't have to wait for Plasma 6 to enjoy all of that. As per GNOME, they now have added editable shortcuts to GNOME Builder, so if you develop GNOME apps, you can now personalize your workflow, which is pretty nice, and the modified shortcuts will also appear in the menus. They also released a new version of Libadwaita, the library that lets developers build apps that look and feel like GNOME apps. There's a new component called Advaita Banner, which serves the same purpose as the GTK info bars, these little blue banners that can appear underneath the header bars. There's also a new tab overview widget that lets you switch tabs on mobile by showing them visually in a grid that adapts to the screen size. Of course, this can also be used in desktop apps, and Console already uses it, and Epiphany will soon as well. To accompany this, they also have a tab button that has a counter to show the number of open tabs. All Libadwaita widgets now have improved accessibility, and there are smaller fixes to various widgets. On top of that, Tube Converter, the app that lets you download videos and audio files from popular websites, is now completely rewritten in C#, and you can now use it to download playlists. Denaro, the personal finance manager, now lets you change the currency for certain accounts. It lets you add a password to protect the PDFs it can export, and it can import QIF and OFX files. And I love seeing these updates to Libadwaita because they really make it feel like a super polished way of making applications. You might not like the fact that it kinda killed theming for a lot of applications on GNOME, but you can't deny that it boosted the application ecosystem in a way we had never seen before. We even have more complex applications like GNOME Builder or Denaro, when GNOME usually was just simple one-purpose apps. Thunderbird shared more progress on their Android application. If you remember, they're actually working with the K9 Mail developer to turn that app into Thunderbird for Android. And they now have a new full-time developer to help with that work. They started with a redesign of the message view with a new header and a new details pane that will give you more info on the email you're currently viewing. This should ship in the next stable release of K9 Mail. The message list also received some changes with better text alignment and white space, and click areas that are now larger to star messages and for the contact images, so it should be way easier to just select a message without opening it. You also get a way to change the density of the view with a compact, default, or relaxed mode, which is nice because the compact one is way too crowded in my opinion. These changes are already available in the beta version of K9 Mail and will make it into the stable version after they collect some user feedback. And it looks like the development process is super open as well, where they only commit to these UI changes when enough users have given them a shot and tried them out, which is really cool. I really like what Thunderbird is doing right now. And let's finish this with the gaming news. If you were waiting for the Steam Deck to go down in price before you went for one, well, now's the time. With the latest Steam sale, the deck sees a 10% price cut, probably temporarily. This discount applies in all regions where the device is sold, and this means the entry-level device is now 377 euros, and that's the one I would recommend you get, plus a nice big SD card for storage. Since the loading speed and the performance difference between the eMMC storage, the SSD or the SD card are super negligible, I'd recommend you just go for the cheaper option and add an SD card in it. I think it makes more sense financially. And existing Steam Deck owners also got a new update, version 3.4.6, which is a pretty small one, but fixes issues with Forza Horizon 5, Warlong Fallen Dynasty, and it also makes ray tracing available in Doom Eternal, and it fixes graphical corruption in Resident Evil 4 Remake. Basically, it's just a graphics driver update to Mesa 23.1, but it's still nice. And there's also the LAN transfer of your games from one computer running Steam to another, which means you don't have to re-download all your games on all your computers using your data caps or just taking way longer than just copy it through the local network. I can't wait to test that out to actually play some games on devices I have to review. And I also can't wait to tell you about our sponsor. If your computer is due for a full replacement and you plan to run Linux on it, maybe it's time to stop looking at computers made by Windows manufacturers and actually start looking at computers that are made by Linux manufacturers, like today's sponsor, Tuxedo. They have a big range of devices that run Linux out of the box. The hardware has been specifically picked to run well with Linux. And they should suit every price point and every need, whether you need a small, affordable laptop, a NUC, a tower, a workstation, a gaming laptop. They have everything. All the devices are very customizable and configurable with plenty of options, and you can even have your own keyboard layout, your own logo on your device, and all the laptops are openable, repairable, and upgradable, including the SSD, the RAM, the battery, and even sometimes the wireless card. So if you need a new computer and you plan to run Linux on it, and you want to support Linux's development, well, click the link in the description below and get yourself a device from Tuxedo. So, thanks everyone for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't hesitate to like, to subscribe, to turn on notifications, to write a comment. And if you didn't, well, that dislike button is still there, and you can also tell me why in the comments as well. And if you really enjoyed the channel, there are plenty of links in the description to help you support it, from PayPal, Patreon, YouTube memberships, super thanks, whatever my social networks, you get to pick. So, thanks for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!